go. So, what's changed in the last week? What a difference a week makes.
Nothing much. Slow news week.
Yeah?
Yeah. I can't believe it.
You can't?
I can't. I think we're all so cynical, after 2020, for it to just happen more or less normally. Decided in one night, wake up the next day, it's done. Yeah, it's decided. I think we're so jaded by 2020 that we fear it would drag out.
Well, but yeah.
I'm not saying it over in a sense, but the election is, as far as that's concerned.
What people should be surprised about is how it passed off so easily after July 2024.
Right on. Well, this is what I want to talk about today. How strong is this deep state still now? Is it its power is sapped, its options are sapped?
Yes, the deep state has been destroyed. They're dead. They've been destroyed.
That's obviously too far, but their Hail Mary was a bullet to the head with a patsy.
Yep.
It didn't work. And they didn't attempt to rig it because they couldn't, or did they accept, right, okay, it's going to be
too big to rig.
Fallback option, too big to rig, too jerky-headed to shoot. To shoot in the way that, would have passed off as, an Oswald type situation. That's it's damning for a kind of a. Yeah, what else have you got? What else can they do? I mean, obviously they can make it hell for them. That's what we want to speculate about, I suppose.
Yeah, but what I don't understand is why, given, I think we mentioned this before, the Church Committee, 1975, I think, investigation to the CIA. You can go and see the video of some senator holding up a dart gun that would give someone a heart attack. I think it was, and you wouldn't be able to the dart dissolve, and the person would have a heart attack, and they die of apparently natural causes. If they so wanted to get rid of Trump, it was such an existential threat to their agenda, to the blob's agenda, then why didn't they do something like that?
Yeah.
How hard is it to organize a natural causes death?
Good question.
Well, there's one explanation is that they wanted some kind of a spectacular event. They didn't want him to die because then that would achieve nothing. So that suggests that they're not so concerned about Trump, at least in the sense of he's an existential threat to us and we won't be able to do anything about him unless we absolutely get rid of him right now. He has to go, he has to die. That doesn't seem to be the case, because then they would have used any other means available to them, of which there are many, to get rid of him, and they could have done it quietly, and then there would be no, people would just accept the fact that, well, Trump was old and probably not in the best health, and he had a heart attack and he didn't make it, and then they just work it out from there and get in whoever they want after the fact. So I mean, they could have thrown the whole thing into chaos in a certain sense that they had before he picked JD Vance, before that had all happened. Just get rid of Trump. Trump seems to be the real the essential figurehead. It's not like you can just have maybe JD Vance or someone. You have to have Trump. He's the one who has that energy and that, I don't know what he has. He has that special something that none of the rest of them have. So I don't think the dream team of the Avengers or the Justice League or whatever they call them would have been able to organise themselves in Justice League fashion or Avengers fashion without Trump as the figurehead. So why not just get rid of Trump? Why not do it long before now? They had plenty of time. Do it last year, you know what I mean? Just give him a heart attack and done. And then work it out. You just get some rhino Republicans in. Everything goes back to normal. You have the two-party state.
I don't think so.
Huh?
It's been 8 years now of MAGA. There's a movement.
Yeah, but there isn't. They need Trump, right? They needed someone like Trump. They weren't going to be able to organize themselves. And like you have to remember, the rhinos in the Republican Party are the majority, a significant majority of Republicans in the Republican Party in Congress and the Senate are all rhinos. Like they're all deep staters. So, and that's Trump's facing that. That's the first and most serious impediment to him doing anything in his new term, is those people. So if you had got rid of Trump last year in a natural causes way, you avoid any kind of, civil war type situation, unless you want that, but you avoid that. It just goes back to business as usual. Okay, there's MAGA being talked about with Gates and different people, the small clique of actual Republicans, actual MAGA types, but there are very few in the Republican Party. They'd still be rabble rousing and stuff, but you would just go back to the old standard, So why not do that? Well, don't know. The only explanation I can think of is that by opting for trying to assassinate him in spectacular fashion, that they wanted some kind of because it would have caused a lot of chaos within the country, within the political system in America, and it might not have survived it actually. So,
well, why would you want that?
Because they like destruction.
There's definitely that, but there's a phenomenon going on where Trump started it, but there's many others now speaking the same language. Like, look at it this way. Many of the things, from diet, farming, corruption in science, the Federal Reserve, it's unconstitutional, weird setup where it's not really even a national central bank, it's a private one. On every subject matter, what the alternative media talked about 20 years ago, the fringes of the fringe, is now the most talked about sets of things, such that, and we'll see how it goes, but such that the nominations or the suggestions about who will be taking up positions in what area will be people who are embodied with those new truth-based narratives in all these areas. So,
who?
Well, RFK Jr. for one.
Well, we'll have to wait to see what position he actually gets. Well, he's talking a lot, but we'll have to see if he gets some kind of position or get some kind of influence. He seems like he's convinced that he's going to get some significant access to reform in the system and all that kind of stuff. But again, he's not a Republican. I mean, just because you put in RFK, have Musk as the Secretary of Government Efficiency, and Tulsi Gabbard as, I don't know what she's going to be, whatever, and a few other hand-picked individuals that you can find within the Republican establishment, like from Congress or from the Senate or whatever. You put a few of those people in position. It doesn't deal with the problem of still the vast majority of Congress on both sides and the Senate are not on board with MAGA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You can't pass any laws.
Yeah,
you can't pass it. You can't put any
they will have to
through.
follow up with drastic, what the other side will call fascistic actions. They can't just threaten it. They actually have to carry it out. At this point, what this election showed is that the media as a whole, mainstream media, isn't just getting things wrong. It's an impediment to everything. So their licenses would need to be revoked, their broadcast licenses. You can't just carry on business as normal. Everyone, whether it's rhinos in Congress or civil servants in DC or generals in some bunker somewhere manning the nuclear missiles, heads need to roll so that they all get the message that you're coming on board with it because the people have spoken. That's how revolutionary. You need to follow.
But that's an overthrow to a dictatorship.
No, that's perfectly within his rights. He could do that.
You can't get rid of. You can't have heads roll in Congress for people who don't agree with it. You can't kick them out. You can't kick out.
They can get the message though that they no longer have. Like there's a few examples of things that are creeping up this week, which will no longer happen. Which would have to no longer happen. this shit would have to stop. So the first one I have is the Pentagon generals, unnamed. They just said they had secret meetings among themselves about how to deal with this situation. And it's very vague, but the implicit message being carried by leaking it to CNN and ABC News and broadcasting that out to the people who just gave a mandate to Trump and MAGA and America First and everything is we still have power. Okay, you're not going to be able to do that if we start revoking the licenses and they no longer broadcast.
But you can't.
I know it's a big if,
but you can't revoke the licenses of the mainstream media.
You can't.
I mean, you can't. I don't think they're going to do that because that immediately is like totalitarian, authoritarian regime. You can't.
And the people who will be barking that will be the people who no longer can broadcast.
Yeah, but anybody, like, I mean, it would look to everybody, and it would look bad to, I mean, okay, you'd have diehard Trump supporters and stuff who would cheer about CNN or MSNBC, etc., having their licenses revoked, but that would look really bad because, like, what about free speech? What about all this talk about free speech?
Yeah, that's not free speech, though.
It is, though.
It's freedom to lie.
Huh? But that's what they're for. I mean, free speech is, you're an absolutist.
Freedom of speech, not freedom of reach. So you don't get to have the ear of everyone if you're going to give the bullshit version, one-sided version only. That's,
I don't think, but you have equal. I mean, you should have equal reach, but you can't remove people who say things that you don't like or you can prove, let's say, are false. I mean, the pro-Trump media, Fox News mainly, can be accused of distorting facts to one extent or another. You know what I mean? So it's like the most you should do is allow for equal opportunity, open debate, open discourse. That's what like X is all about. Let's say you can't be shutting it down. It's the left that wanted to shut it down with the whole Twitter files and all that kind of stuff. Wanted to shut down people from actually speaking. You can't turn around and do that to CNN. You can't ban CNN from X. You can't ban CNN from the airwaves. And say because I don't agree with what they're saying, even if I can prove that they're lying, but then I should prove that they're lying and let the chips fall where they may. If you turn around and start banning people's license and removing them from the airwaves, then you can't avoid a claim, and it's a reasonable claim that you're engaging in totalitarianism or censorship yourself. You're all about anti-censorship, and
it's going to have to happen some way or the other. Like this is look. Structurally, this is just what has happened. This is how it works in the rest of the world. This is how it works in Russia, in China, in every other major country. In Russia, it's nominally, yes, free zone. And there are certain laws on the edges. You can't be saying this and this and this, especially with the start of their special military operation. They added some laws to the books. That's the writ. That's the letter of the law. What I'm saying is, one step behind that, you have to take actions that reshape the structure of the media. I don't care what you have to. You can chase them to Israel. You can take away you can threaten them physically. I don't know what they're going to do, but you've got to get control of it because at the moment you've got this huge mandate of what the people want, and you've got this domination of what goes into their heads by this clique.
But the vast majority
that has to change.
But that already has changed. I mean, why would you take any action against it when it clearly didn't work for this election? The leftist media were spewing all sorts of lies for the past 4 years, past 8 years about Trump over and over and over again.
And this has been a resounding exposure that they're worse than useless.
So why bother doing anything? Why would you censor them?
Because people are now killing themselves because they believe that living under Trump will be so horrible. And where are they getting that from? They're getting that from the media. That they're a menace to society. They need to be broken up. They can hit them with antitrust laws. Monopolized media, the vast concentration of power, Comcast, Disney, the super corps behind them, they can be broken up. And they can just start to threaten. There are all kinds of ways. You just need to start using it. Lawfare, explicit threats.
Well, you can do that stuff.
But I know I'm fantasizing here, but this is the kind of thing you would need to follow. If you really want a MAGA, this is where you've got to start going. You now have a mandate for that. It's got to be done carefully.
It's going into dangerous territory, though. I mean, and I don't think it's necessary, to be honest. Given, like as you said, given how they perform, given how the probably, you know, a large majority, a significant majority of the American voting public, at least, whatever about the rest of the people who didn't vote, but the percentage of the population that actually voted in this election, a significant majority of them, all clearly had no interest in listening to or believing anything that CNN. In fact, they stated at the polls that we don't believe anything you've said. So
okay, so let me put it this way:
there's an option there to just let the CNN die and MSNBC etc. die a natural death because no one will listen to them anymore.
What if they start? There's no sign of it yet. There have been a few protests, but what if they start to whip up a color revolution in concert? The media comes in the US. And there's riots on the streets.
Yeah, well, at that
there's a menace to society, and they can't just go in and beat heads of those in the streets because clearly they're victim to the evil, nonsense being poured in their ear.
If the media starts actually weaponizing the section of the population that it has the ears of and inciting them into violence in the street, well, then you would take action against them. You know what I mean? But like the idea of wholesale censorship or banning of them or shutting them down from the airwaves and stuff, I think you can do a lot of things before you get to that point, you know, before you need to go to that point, because that does have bad optics, like in a certain sense.
Yeah, as long as the optics are controlled by the media. As long as the optics are controlled by the same media.
Well, yeah, it's just, I don't know. I just think it's much better to let things be decided in the court of public opinion, rather than being at least at the level.
But the court of public opinion is poisoned.
But it's obviously not by CNN, given that a majority of people don't believe it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't see there's any reason to actually remove them or take that kind of extreme censorship of the leftist media, unless they actually are engaged in or involved in promoting of dangerous rhetoric that is inciting violence. You know, at a certain point where there might be a colour revolution brewing or something, and CNN are whipping it up and all that kind of stuff, then you could take action against them.
Yeah.
But until that, if it's just the case of them wanting to say mean things about Trump, go ahead.
The status quo boomer rhino politicians need to understand that it's not business as usual. Like, you are no longer going to have a manipulated poll tell you what the American people really want, and then appeal to that by enacting legislation that in fact goes against what they've just clearly said they want. That this workaround bullshit is ending, and there's all kinds of signs about they're aware of whatever they're going to do and what they can do and can't do legally. All kinds of signs are coming out about their awareness of. I've got Don Jr.'s retweeting Mike Penz's stuff about how, first order of business, cut off the State Department funding to the NGO networks abroad that produce fake news over there, that's recycled back. Look, Americans, what the world out there is thinking. This is what we need to do. Cut it off. Maybe not immediately, not day one, but they're showing awareness of how these things have worked thus far. And it's not just to do with foreign affairs. It's how they want the world reflected back to Americans a certain way. There's a lot to do. I mean, for MAGA to work, I mean, we'll see. The only definitive nomination so far is this woman, Suzanne Wiles for Chief of Staff. Interesting. America's first ever female Chief of Staff. There is one other interim appointee, Brian Hook. That's not a good sign. He's like a neocon deep stater. In charge of the transition State Department team. We'll see. Other than that, it's too early. It's too early to say. But there are a lot of... I'm just impressed by the amount of hints of awareness of the kinds of revolutionary, but they only seem revolutionary to us because of what we've been so inured and used to for so long. It's not actually fucking revolutionary. The broadcast licenses can be revoked for all kinds of reasons, and they can work. They can do an Al Capone around it. Al Capone was guilty of murder and racketeering and conspiracy and all kinds of prostitution and everything, sex trafficking. They got him on tax evasion. Message clearly delivered. The others calmed down after that. You know what I'm saying? See what I'm getting at? There's all kinds of ways.
Yeah, but I think the problem, what I think's missing in that analysis is you're referring to a handful of people, and you're missing the blob that exists and the strength of the blob and the intransigence of the blob that has been there for a very long time. And here I'm talking about the combination of pretty much all of Congress, most of the Senate, and the entire intelligence apparatus, plus the Pentagon, plus the generals. The idea that a few people like Trump and a few members of his family and the Justice League members who are all super aware and talking like we kind of talk and seeing the world like we and many Americans see it, that's enough. They know that you see that way. They know that they know that Don Jr. and Donald Trump, and they know what RFK Jr. How he views it, Tulsi Gabbard and Musk and all that kind of stuff. They know that, but they're like, nah, you're not going to do it. It's not happening. And you can try, but you're not going to do it because we run the country, and have done for a very long time. A case in point is Tucker Carlson just posted this yesterday. It's just like the first kind of movement in that direction. Here, only less than a week after the election, he wrote yesterday, "What the hell is going on in the US Senate? Hours after Donald Trump wins the most conclusive mandate in 40 years, Mitch McConnell engineers a coup against his agenda by calling early leadership elections in the Senate. Two of the three candidates hate Trump and what he ran on. One of them, John Cornyn, is an angry liberal whose politics are indistinguishable from Liz Cheney's. The election is this Wednesday. It's coming Wednesday. It's by secret ballot, and it will determine whether or not the new administration succeeds. Point blank. Rick Scott of Florida is the only candidate who agrees with Donald Trump. Call your senator and demand a public endorsement of Rick Scott. Don't let McConnell get away with it." You notice what Robert F. Kennedy said below there in the first comment. Without Rick Scott, the entire Trump agenda is wobbly. So, they're aware of it as well. As much as they're like, oh yeah, we know what's going on in the world and all these things have to be fixed and all this kind of stuff, they're like, that's one tiny thing. And enacted by the Senate, enacted by Mitch McConnell, by Mitch McConnell. All he has to do is say, "Oh, we're gonna have a secret ballot to elect an anti-Trump leader of the Senate," and then you're screwed. Done. There you go. Do your MAGA now.
Yeah. Shit. All right then. Close Senate. Who needs it?
Ban the Senate. Shut the Senate down.
Fuck them. Yeah, I know. The checks and balances, eh? The checks and balances.
That's what it's there for.
It's not over.
It's not
over by a long shot. It's an ongoing battle. But it is a great moment because it's like, it not only provides clarity on the entire post 9/11 era, arguably longer than that, I suppose. It's the end of Pax Americana. Along the way, it exposes 2020 because of the tallies we saw, the total vote tallies. 2012, 2016, 2024, consistent in total. Blue here, red there, and then 2020. What the fuck happened there? That's not possible. Everyone agrees with that now.
Check out this. It's kind of funny how they make their own point. They're so deluded. This is some liberal Kamala supporter basically who's saying the ban's going to make it, right? Check this out. This is after Trump won, right?
Kamala's speech that we heard, where she basically said, we always win. Sometimes the fight takes longer. It gives off the same vibes as sometimes people will close the door on you and then you just got to kick that fucker down. I think that's what she's doing right now. She's kicking that fucker down. And that's why she's so damn quiet. Because they're in there going, wait a minute, we're seeing all these people saying my vote isn't counted. They're going through and saying, what are all these people that, I see that they voted in every single damn election, right down to dog catcher, but for some reason they didn't vote in this election.
Yeah, well,
and
who are they?
What about like the return of mail-in ballots is usually 10% in this state don't return their mail-in ballots. But for some reason, this election, it's 30% of people that didn't return their ballots. And you know what she's going to do? She's going to go to court with actual evidence because she's a lawyer instead of, trust me, bro, they're broken. And we're getting our election back. We're taking our country back. I truly believe that. And I also believe that that's why we are all very upset about this, but we're like, our guts are calm. We know inside of our guts that this is not what reality is. We know that there's something fishy going on, and we're getting it back. I can just feel it in my bones. It's, give it a couple of weeks, and we're going to end up, there's going to be some announcement or something. Hey, everybody that didn't have their ballot counted, if you are in your state and you didn't have your ballot counted, you go to vote.org, you can come in and cast a ballot if it's already not counted. I mean, something like that's going to happen. Just watch. She's kicking that fucking door down.
So it's actually hilarious because she's so deluded about, obviously, like, election could never be rigged, but she actually talks about the fact that there's all these people who didn't vote, and she's saying they didn't get their vote counted, and it's like, well, technically not all the votes were counted. What you're seeing is the fact that there was a lot of people who should have voted based on the 20 number of votes in 2020 for Biden, but for some reason those 10 million people or so didn't vote in this election. So where were they? And she thinks, oh, that's because they weren't counted, so there's election fraud, right? And then the other thing is, what about the missing mail-in ballots? Usually there's about 10% are missing, but this time it was 20% of missing mail-in ballots. Where are they? They were that's more rigging, right? They were thrown away. And she wants Kamala, because she's a lawyer, right? She wants her to go to court, take that evidence and go to court. And she'd take Kamala, if she has any sense, obviously would be going, yeah, I probably won't be doing that, because you take all that stuff, and what you'd actually be taking to court would be evidence for rigging of the 2020 election rather than evidence of the 2024 election.
Right.
But that's how deluded these people are. But so obviously that's not going to be a way in which if they were to contest this election, which I don't think they're going to, but if they're going to test the results of the election, they wouldn't be doing it along those lines. And I don't think there is any method or means by which they could contest the results of this election. It seems to have been surprisingly a free and fair election in the USA. And it's really good to I think that's more or less how it went down. And it's really interesting for that to have happened, because it gives you a good read on the types of people on the split in America, an objective idea of the split in America in terms of Trump supporters versus this authoritarian follower types who just want
the CIA to rule in perpetuity.
Yeah, they want.
They don't think of it that way.
Yeah,
but
it's very strange. We were talking about this earlier on with Anna, actually, and it's kind of strange because we've all lived in this reality, and it's the same, at least in the Western world, in the international community, in America and Western Europe and stuff. We've all, pretty much everybody alive today, has their experience of politics in the world, in the Western world, let's say, has been of, suits, politicians in suits, spewing kind of banal, political catchphrases and platitudes, and it's either Republican or Democrat, doesn't matter. It's always been the political class that has ruled and dominated political life and run the Western world, basically. And it's been there for so long that's just we didn't know that there was anything different, you know, and people just got to accept it. Like kind of like most people probably just unless you were like actually a diehard political activist who are interested in that kind of thing, but most people are just like those people don't relate to me at all. You know, they're not relevant to me. They don't talk like me. They don't sound like me, and they don't talk in a way that I can in any way I can relate to, basically. So it's just let them do their thing, and as long as the country runs and I'm left on my own and left to my own devices and you know my life, then I'm fine. But I don't pay any attention to those people. And then along comes Trump, and you didn't even know that it was possible to have some dude come along for all his flaws to actually not be a politician, not be one of those suits, not be throwing out loads of platitudes or reading from a teleprompter, reading political speech from a teleprompter, to get up there and just start talking shit and calling people names and talking like the ordinary people talk, but still have the strength and the ability to actually, you know, run a country, basically, to have the motivation or the willingness to actually get up there and put himself in the middle of that, you know. So it's bizarre to have. It's like, it does feel like a new reality in a certain sense. We never knew this was possible because it's been going on for so long with just the standard political class, and suddenly this man of the people type thing comes along and somehow manages to get in there. And it's, you know, it's obviously a confluence of it being the right time, you know, come the hour, come the man type thing, as they say, you know. It obviously was necessary that political class for so long, for many generations, have been basically progressively running the Western world into the ground, basically, through their corruption and their self-interest and their cronyism. And it got to the point where it was just the time was ripe for someone like Trump to come along, and only someone like Trump, or a man of the people, quote unquote man of the people, could have done that, would have had that appeal to ordinary people to get behind him. Otherwise, people would have just progressively been more and more alienated from the political system and the political process. And they would have, it would have ended badly. So it was almost like it is a saving grace in a certain sense at the final hour type thing for Trump to come along. But he's definitely up against it. He's up against intergenerational political class and it's just such a massive behemoth, like, you know.
But he's taken most people along with him. People brave enough. A lot of former Dems and former apolitical people are, you know, you see their confession videos on social media. It's like, I can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm on Team Trump. This is the great man of history sort of perspective, where the emphasis is on the leader. And it's not black or white. So in another context, looking at it from another way, you might say, well, it's a structural issue. There are big forces at work and so on. So how much emphasis to give to the man? Is Trump exceptional? Yeah, probably. But then go way back, globe level, you know, perspective. What's been going on that come at the man, come at the hour? What were the ground conditions that meant that people would go, you know what, I'm going to take a chance?
Well, because the country was going down the tubes.
Was going down the tubes. What had happened, you know? And was there anyone else out there? I think indirectly, maybe subconsciously, maybe they didn't even connect it themselves. But it's interesting that the Trump years, 8 of them so far, we're going to have 12, unless he's, you know, taken out properly. We're going to have 12, which is ironic as hell. But anyway, so far, the 8 Trump years are, in a sense, dominated, but more like a background issue, by Russia. Russia. And why Russia? Because of a great man over there, Vladimir Putin. So in a sense, the way I see it is Putin is their real ire, the kind of the lightning rod. He was a man, he is literally working class, unlike Trump, who came along, rose to the top with this unbelievable warrior spirit that could do what he's done, and the intelligence and the grace, which Trump doesn't have.
He has his own type of grace.
To do what he's done to make Russia great again, it's by no means done. Russia's struggling in a US-dominated, sanctioned world, but he's still done amazing things with the little he could. But then started challenging the bully. the smackdown in Syria. Before that was 2015. The smackdown in Crimea. 2014 changed the fucking world. Trump comes after that. I don't think it's a coincidence. Trump didn't appear in 2008. When you imagine though, after Bush, there would have been a backlash. There would have been an opportunity there for Trump. He didn't come in 2008. It didn't even come in 2012 after 4 years of Obama. It was post Putin's. Putin was the first to say enough. Enough.
To throw the gauntlet down.
And I think that the never Trumpers kind of know that. And that's why, in a sense, maybe perhaps psychologically, without quite being aware of what they're narrating, they're pressuring Trump. Don't you dare, don't you dare, don't you dare do what he's doing. Any association with him is evil. It's worse than Hitler even, because it's more than the Hitler thing. The Putin-Russia thing. 8 fucking years of that non-stop.
Yeah, well, it started in 2014, because a couple of things started in 2014. Obviously, you had the coup in Crimea, or in Ukraine. The U.S. State Department coup in Ukraine that really set the U.S. and Russia at serious odds with each other, and has brought up since then increasingly the spectre of nuclear war and destruction of all life on Earth, which upset people. Like, and that's them. That's the political class in America, in particular in the West, in earnest, beginning to run the whole thing into the ground. To push it too far to try and consolidate their control beyond all reason. And also, you had 2014 is officially, according to most academics who have studied and all that kind of stuff, was the beginning of cancel culture, when they started to cancel any dissenting voices. So you had at least 2 years of really unsettling developments in the Western world that really started to wake people up, I think, and make them go and pushed a lot of them towards Trump. And so Trump comes along in 2016 or 2015, let's say, but 2016 when he gets elected and stuff. And that's where it only took a couple of years. Maybe it was a few years before that things had been brewing, but certainly from 2014 onwards, it really lit a fire under a lot of people, made them sit up and take notice and realise that this place is going down the toilet unless we do something about it. Trump comes along and has at the very least, just has a different perspective on it. People intuited a lot of things that he said.
But he brought them together for them. In a way that's it.
He wasn't being very explicit about a lot of things, but they just got
not very articulate.
No, but they got a read on him that he was going to do things differently, and people had seen up to that point that things had taken a serious turn for the worst in the past few years. And we need to stop the rot right now, and that's where the support for him came.
I think what you have in mind is those studies of Google searches and or word searches based on media reports like from the New York Times, all the legacy media, where woke terms first went. They're going along ever since the 60s, and then 2011 to 2014 they just shoot up. White supremacy. The patriarchy. All that.
But there's actually been studies done on it as well, like what I call him, Jonathan Haidt and his...
he said 2014 was a key year,
Yeah, so they defined 2014 as the time when that cancel culture stuff and the censorship basically really started in earnest, And that's a major thing, obviously, when people start to see that there's a push by the state apparatus to spread censorship, to really, push censorship on the people and on social discourse in a serious way. That's going to really, like, anybody who has any sense is going to go, this is bad. This one thing is bad, where you're trying to shut people down, where you can't actually speak, because the only thing that stops that would prevent totalitarianism from actually instituting itself in any given country is the ability for people to say what they want to say publicly in whatever way they can, use whatever means they can. And there should be, means available, free means available to everybody if they wanted to say what they want. And as soon as you put a suppressive hand on that, then people, I think, know instinctively that's really bad. That's the one defining thing that is, because everything else is downstream from that. All other evils are downstream from the inability to speak out against it. Do you know what I mean? Because all sorts of other malign and things can happen in a country, or they can attempt to institute all sorts of other evils within in a country. But as long as you have the ability amongst the people to actually stand up and protest about it, shout about it, say on social media that it's wrong,
your grievances,
petitions, all that kind of stuff, then you still feel you have some ability to stop that from happening. But if you're not allowed to say it, well, then all sorts of bad things can happen.
Yeah.
It goes downhill very quickly. So that was a major thing.
There's a video going viral at the moment, actually. It's a 6-minute video of Trump saying what he would do to maintain freedom of speech. And I don't think people understand. It's actually from the summer or even earlier. It was part of a series of videos he did.
It was December and January. December 2022 and January 2023. He was basically outlining his plans, his policies that he would have for now.
Specifically to bar any government involvement in so-called content moderation.
Exactly. There was that, and then there was also the one on his plans to stop, as he calls it, chemical, physical and emotional manipulation of America's youth. He put out another video of about 3.5 minutes on that and had like a 10-point, 10 or 11-point plan. And it's amazing if you actually listen to it. It's like, this is pretty much exactly the same policy that the Russian government has.
Yes.
So
propagandizing the youth.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. That you can't then have the big 5 networks say, well, fuck you, we'll do it anyway. You have got to try to stop them. So what's your money where your mouth is? Somehow.
No,
or pressure them or threaten them or whatever.
No, well, you can have the media argue against that, but as long as the government is allowed to exercise its authority, an administration is allowed to exercise its authority, then it doesn't matter what the media says. If Trump says he's going to prevent any censorship, pass laws, whatever, to prevent censorship on social media, etc., and to prevent the chemical, physical, emotional manipulation of America's youth by passing laws, well, the media CNN can complain about those laws being passed till the cows come home. You can let them do it. But it doesn't matter. The majority of the population who voted for Trump are in support of that. And CNN isn't. Big deal. CNN isn't.
And they will eventually drop it because it's just not working. Can you put up that last one I sent you? on the Democrats, Harris, nonetheless having a sizable portion of the country, the other half, let's say, that just happened to lose this one. So this map showing the states won by each of the candidates. Yeah. So the blue ones, apart from 2, I checked and they might have got one wrong there, where actually there is no ID required, but it's generally correct. The correlation is high. The states, quote, won by Harris are where no voter ID required. Right there, you've got, it's wide open to fraud.
Yeah.
Plus the other map, we won't show it, but people have seen the map of counties.
Yeah.
California is mostly red.
Yeah. It's possible that in those counties, or in those states, where no photo ID was required, that there was some extra votes for Kamala. But the other point is that those states passed those laws prior to this election, some of them quite a while before this election, with, we have to assume, the consent of the majority of people in those states, which means that the people in those states were always going to vote for Kamala anyway. Those states were always going to be blue. And that's what I was saying about earlier on, that if this was mostly a free and fair election and the results do reflect the will of the American people, or the attitudes of the American people, it's very instructive to see that it's basically the Yankees, the classic Yankees up in the northwestern states, and then
the West Coasters,
and the West Coasters for the most part,
and the blow-ins in Colorado and New Mexico.
It gives you a good idea of what Americans have to deal with, in the sense of it gives an idea of just how divided their country is. It may be something like 65, because you don't know as well. A lot of people didn't vote. What was the actual turnout?
It's 2/3, 66, I think.
Was the turnout
66%? Yeah.
So there's a third of the population who didn't bother their asses. No matter, they completely dismissed the appeals from both sides, the strenuous appeals from both sides. That this is the most important election in your lifetime. All of the outcome of this election is going to vary more so than any other election in American history. Let's say is going to directly impact your lives. And despite those strenuous appeals, 33%, which is 100 plus million people, did not vote. Couldn't get off their asses to actually go and vote. So the question is, what do those people think? Are they just like ulcerans? Are they all just like, they're irrelevant in a certain sense? They really don't care. They won't have any part to play in anything because if they didn't vote in this election, really, do they even care about anything political? Do they have any interest whatsoever in the political process? Do they even pay attention to it? Do they watch social media?
All good questions, but they all start with the assumption that most American adults are more or less the same, in the sense that they're they identify as Americans. They've been there. They were born there. But we don't need. I'm not even sure you can. In fact, you can't. You cannot get an accurate number
for the population,
for what the actual population of the United States is. The government itself doesn't know. I mean, that's so yeah.
Yeah, but still, we're talking about a significant percent of the population that didn't actually, maybe 100 million people or more didn't actually vote. But then you look at who did vote, and you see all the red states, and you see all the blue states, and you see that the blue states were, so it was maybe let's call it, like, between the people who voted, maybe say let's call it 60% for, even though it's not of the popular vote. It's actually something like 52%, 51%, 52% of the popular vote to 48% from Kamala. Again, you divide it 3 ways. 100 million didn't vote. 100 million plus didn't vote. 110 million didn't vote. 110 million voted for Kamala, and 110 million voted for Trump. Roughly. A bit more for Trump, obviously, because he won the popular vote, right? But so you're talking about an extra few million. But it's almost like the country split in 3 ways there, And if it's true, you have 100 plus million people who all actually believe CNN. That's a lot of people. That's a problem. Those people are entrenched. Those people aren't going to change, I don't think, in the near future anyway. And they voted for Kamala. They looked at Kamala. They looked at Biden. They looked at Kamala. They looked at their policies, and they backed those policies.
Yeah, but they're so uninvolved that if you discreetly, find ways to turn down the signal, they're like weather vanes. They'll shift to a stronger signal.
Yeah, they're easily influenced, yeah. They don't have solid foundations, let's say. They have vague kind of
They're not
ideas.
going to go down with CNN for the reasons you just gave.
Yeah.
They don't care.
Yeah. Well, no.
So if they're going in and out of the airports,
no, they do
and the
care.
bars,
I'm not talking,
CNN isn't there.
Well, no, I'm not talking about the 100% here, or the third that didn't vote. I'm talking about the third that voted for Kamala. Those people aren't going to change. Although it maybe does hold true that they are quite impressionable people. They're quite naive people. The main axe they have to grind is that everything should be fair and nice and pleasant, and they're very naive. Like, obviously, they're the kind of people who would say, well, if that teenager if that teenage girl says she's a boy, then you have to respect their wishes because they're crying. They're sad that they're not a boy, and they want to be a boy even though they're a girl. So it's like they have no sense. They're not adults in that sense. They I can't imagine. Obviously, a lot of them have kids, and I can't imagine the kind of kids they reared. But it's like the idea of like being aware that kids are kids and they have ideas, and they can be quite strong-willed and insistent and angry
only
at you and stuff.
A child-adult mind could actually believe that about a child.
Yeah, it would go along with it. They're
Two children would believe
they're
that.
not adult. They don't have the adult responsibility. Yeah, although it's very difficult at the same time. You know what I mean? Because what are you going to do? Like, we know some people anyway who are in that position where their children decided they were going to wanted to transition and stuff, and it's like it's not simple. It's easy for you can turn, if you have no experience of that, if you're not directly involved in that, it's easy to say, well, you should just tell them, no, that's just a silly idea, and you're not going to do it. But the reality is a lot
pass
tougher.
a law like Putin did, ban propagandizing of children. Done.
Well, it would help.
Oh my God! But they'll scream. They'll scream at the sky. Go on, scream at the sky. You got to stop it. If you're serious, but just stop it. And maybe you want to be smart about it and stop it, like by just dialing it down initially, and then cut it. Here.
Well, that one that Trump's policy of like I said, of preventing the stop a chemical, physical, and emotional mutilation, not manipulation, but mutilation of America's youth. You can go a long way to preventing the trauma and suffering that is involved in that situation by preventing the free access,
cutting off government support for such.
Yeah,
in your own private
and promoting it. Yeah,
that's how you start. It helps by not having one of them as your health secretary.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's madness. Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, if we're going to go from, you can imagine a parent in a situation where their kid is, says they're gay and then wants to transition or whatever. If there is no outlet for that, where the teenager can't just walk down to a building in the middle of town and go in and get support from a government agency and information, affirmation that yes, you're right to want to transition, and yes, we can go and have you can have top and bottom surgery and all this kind of stuff. Make it very easy for them. Then it's a lot better. It would be a lot better if that wasn't available, because then the issue just sort of have to be dealt with at home, which is where it should be dealt with.
Exactly. Don't reinforce bad behavior. Step number 1. Stop government funding of bad behavior.
Yeah.
And that comes. This is where, yes, you hit the limits of American ideals of freedom. Well, do I have freedom to mutilate my kids? No, you're coming up against society there. Mm-hmm. There are limits to freedom. There are limits to free speech. Of course, they don't say that in public, but everyone's thinking that. There's, like I said, there's trouble on the right. I mean, it's going to be. It's such a total spanking of the entire. It's so bad. It's so bad that in Western Europe they're like, what just happened? That wasn't supposed to happen, because essentially the CIA controlled U.S. State Department funded media, often in Western Europe, told them the picture of the world that they want Americans to believe back home. So Europeans were going, oh yeah, they were polled in Germany, Belgium, France, the UK, Ireland, just on the eve of the election. Who do you think will win? Overwhelming. Oh, Harris is going to win. Mm-hmm. That's the image they were given. This is a whole other issue. Western Europe, it's like that for a lot of reasons. The main one is that the US doesn't want to let go of Western Europe. It wants, of course, to pull it in economically, culturally, keep it on side. But this throws a spanner in the works because, J.D. Vance and Trump want to keep Europe on side with America. But there's got to be a change. I heard Vance saying in another podcast, actually I found something, this is how interested they are in the situation. He was saying in the podcast, so Europe, we expect if they're to remain allies and friendly with us, that they have to cut out the censorship. And we're looking at a number of ways that we can Well, one of the ways, maybe, J.D. Vance took interest in the censorship law drafted in Ireland late last year. Mm-hmm. And he was just a senator in December 2023. Mm-hmm. He writes a letter to the Irish ambassador in the United States. It's 2 pages long, listing his issue with this. And he's saying, one of the cute things he said was, well, what would De Valera have thought of this back when he was held under sedition laws back in 1918. He was showing awareness of the issue historically and stuff, and appealing to Irish. And his last line in that great letter, as a senator still, was, pretty much, you should remember that the United States has a lot of economic investment in Ireland, and it would be a shame if our ally were to continue down this path. I.e., we have purse strings that we can remind you, you can't just be, like working against what I stand for in the United States, freedom of speech and the ability for people to have their grievances heard. So it's going to be interesting. Like, was it the Trump effect? I'm not sure, but within 48 hours of his election, the German coalition government, one of them pulls out, and they're now going to have to. It was even before it. So Scholz is a sitting duck. He's a lame duck chancellor now, Olaf Scholz.
Yeah, more or less.
They have to call elections sooner or later.
Yeah, in the new year, apparently.
Within 48 hours of, this was going to happen anyway, but Ireland has called elections, the sneaky bastards. They've called elections, which are due every 5 years, right, for 3 weeks' time. As if it's a snap election, It's so bad. You're supposed to give people time to, get their shit together. No, let's do it really quick by November 29th this year. I've seen people talk about it in a lot of contexts where it doesn't fit, but there is a Trump effect. People are kind of scrambling and trying to get their ducks in a row.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. America obviously still has it is the global hegemon still, obviously, and
well, it's the daddy of the West.
Even the world, but
all the people who are calling him Adolf Hitler on the day before, the day after, like the British Foreign Minister David Lammy.
He said that a few years before. Yeah, he's the Foreign Minister, I think.
Then he's like, we congratulate President Trump. We look forward to working with him.
Yeah, 5 years ago, he had called him.
Wasn't it more recent?
No, it was about 5 years ago, yeah, when Trump was running. Or more, actually. I think it was 2017 or something like that. Anyway, yeah, it was funny to see the Europeans all kind of freak out a little bit. They must have known. I don't think any of them were that naive. You never know, though, wishful thinking and all that, but
they're leaders.
I think a lot of them, someone at least behind the scenes knew that it was like that Trump was going to win. So, and they're worried about just being left on their own. We're no good on our own now. They've created a situation, Europeans have created a situation where they're no good on their own. They've hitched their skirts to the wagon, to the American state, basically, quite a long time ago. They've played along with the Biden administration and the deep state's anti-Russian agenda. They got on board with that, and now they're kind of all in a certain sense. Well, they're maybe not fully all in, because not all European countries are, but the EU, the bureaucrats in the EU are a bit worried now about what are we going to do? We kind of threw our lot in with you, and in terms of Ukraine, that you were going to follow through with Ukraine and the money laundering and all that kind of stuff, and you were going to support us against Russia. What happens now if Trump decides not to support us so much against Russia, and what happens if we have to turn around and try and make friends with Russia in some way or other? And that's going to be a bad situation for us, because we'll be going cap in hand effectively to Russia, because we said a lot of bad things about them. We treated them quite badly over the X number of years, and for us to have to turn around and kind of go begging in a certain sense to Russia would be in a disfavourable position. And that, so please, Trump, don't throw us to the bear, throw us to the wolves.
Well, the rumor is Trump's peace deal plan is Russia gets the 4 oblasts.
No, well, on the line of contact,
as it is now, so not the whole of them.
No,
okay, and the rest is Ukraine, rump, what remains to be manned by European peacekeepers, not American.
Yeah, which, under Trump that will be the case, I think, to a large extent. The CIA and their secret teams notwithstanding, but at least overtly that would be the situation. Trump wouldn't be committing troops to some kind of peacekeeping troops in a neutral zone in Ukraine. You want the Europeans to do it, but the problem with that is, like, you've no guarantee that you're going to get the Europeans to do it. Like, you know what I mean? They're all brave, you know, stand behind the American deep state's shoulder. Yeah, Russia, he's going to get you if you don't do what we say. And then they're all changing, and Trump isn't standing in that position anymore. Suddenly they're faced directly with Russia, and I don't think you're going to get. It's not like you just, in terms of just, you know, laying out a plan like that and having it happen. Like, okay, so, you know, just European troops in the neutral zone, frozen line of contact, basically, and just let's see where it goes. But you all put your troops in there and, like, you know, you know, face down the bear type thing. You know what I mean? But you guys doing it, right? Yeah. Go ahead, Poland. Come on, get the Lithuanians in. How many? Half a dozen Lithuanians. You know, couple of hundred Estonians. You're not going to. I don't know. Brits. Would you get the Brits in there? I don't think so. I mean, and it's just, Europe isn't unified in that respect. No, you know what I mean? You don't have that unity. The European Union is nonsense because it's fine for an economic policy, and that's all it ever should be. But in terms of foreign policy and all that kind of stuff, it never was and never will be and is not now. There is no unified foreign policy towards the rest of the world within Europe. Europe is historically a continent. Western Europe is part of a continent with
Russia on it.
With individual, separate and different nation states. And it still is that way today. Sure, the European Economic Zone or community was an idea and worked, but they didn't leave it just at the economics. They wanted to create a super state, like America, and with von der Leyen as the Führer, you know.
The ironic tragedy is they should have, and many of them reach for that. The European superstaters like Guy Verhofstadt, that's what they want, the federalists. And that's, ironically, for this time, that's what's needed for what they wish, which is for Europe to be a cohesive competitor, independent of both Washington and Beijing and Moscow.
Economically, but not in any other way.
No.
Not foreign policy, not even
if you look
policy.
Back over the 60 years, it was always influenced strongly by Washington and London. Yeah, you can unite, but not in this way, not in that way. They were adding conditions. Yeah, unite, but really just for NATO. But there are so many examples of how any kind of effort to really strike out on their own was subverted. Because they were allowed to unite, but only under the American nuclear umbrella, with Britain as airstrip one. Right. Well, but actually becoming your own, no.
Well, you can become your own. I mean, because if they were independent of America, they would have been primarily allied with the East, with Russia. You know what I mean? As a major energy producer, and as we're seeing today with China, would have been would have been and are in reality part of the Eurasian landmass. With all of the natural alliances that implies, you know what I mean? And America is an offshore island, like, at the end of the day.
It's far away.
In terms of the Northern Hemisphere.
Moscow's a European city. It's ironic, you know, Charles de Gaulle was the last big European leader to see cooperation and increasing ties with the East as the way forward. And he stepped down. I don't think he ever claimed it was a coup, but I mean, it was a coup. It was a student revolution. And then he stepped down. And that was pretty much the end of it. There's been, who's the big leader since then? I mean, the German Chancellor Kohl was big, but he had the Americans greasing his pockets the whole way. Maybe not literally with money, but the whole reunification of Germany was a promise that Europe will now be united in one. Yeah, but with the American troops aren't going anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And NATO would expand up to Russia. And
Yeah. But no, but in terms of the Ukraine conflict, I mean, it's going to continue on. I mean, and as much as the Russians say that, you know, we're going to carry on with our special military operation and we will achieve our objectives and stuff, they are. I mean, Lavrov recently, I think last month, whatever, told a group of ambassadors, new ambassadors that were being signed in, he mentioned that, and this isn't new, like they've been demanding the lifting of anti-Russian sanctions. Those sanctions are a problem for Russia. As much as Russia has navigated them fairly well, they are still a problem, and Russia is suffering to one extent or another under those sanctions, and it is a major goal of theirs to have those sanctions lifted. So if that was part of a settlement, some kind of a conflict settlement in Ukraine, where Russia would agree to, you know, it's all about finding a way to save face. Everybody saves face. Mm-hmm. The West, the Americans and NATO basically doesn't look like they lost to Russia. They forced a settlement on Russia. At the same time, Russia, in this configuration, they wouldn't have achieved their objectives of
demilitarization of all Ukraine.
No, of occupying, well, even less than that, of repatriating or annexing, let's say, the 4 regions. They'll only get the area that it controls as of the time that the conflict ended, i.e. not even all of Donbass.
Oh, I think...
Because they don't have all of Donbass at the minute, and they you know, it'll be a while before they get all of it. They have most of Luhansk, and the other 2 regions are partial as well. So that would be not a non-achievement of the official special military objectives, operation objectives. So, but would that be something that the Russians could, over the next X number of months, you know, prepare the Russian population for acceptance of through their media and stuff, by talking about it as a positive, and this is good and all kinds of stuff. There's a way forward there, and this all leaves aside. This is all just talking about normal politics, right? Trump doing his art of the deal, whatever, with everybody and anybody, including Russia and Ukraine. It all being worked out because he's a reasonable guy, and it's all about economics, and there's no idealism, no global domination. There's no manifest destiny of America in
any kind of a deal is the end of hegemony, because hegemony is we get whatever we want.
Yeah,
and nobody resists us.
Right,
Russia
exactly.
has resisted for 10 years now.
Right.
So if there's any kind of a deal where both lose, both don't get what they want, it means hegemonists don't get what they usually get, which is everything.
Exactly.
That's already a win. Yeah. That's the end of hegemony, in fact.
So there's a way forward for that all to happen, but it doesn't account for the possibility of the intel types and the deep state inserting some agenda. We haven't even talked about Iran and Israel on where that's going, which is obviously another issue. And of course, China is a big issue for the Americans. Maybe that's their most important issue, and maybe that's one aspect of why they might want to be, the Trump administration be willing to kind of like bring an end to the conflict in Ukraine, because they want to focus more on China and dealing with China from an economic perspective, you know. So and then Iran, the Middle East. Again, it's just all, at least Ukraine and the Middle East are open for fifth columnists to come in and upset any attempts Trump might make to bring peace to those particular conflicts, because we know they don't like peace.
On the tack that Trump was allowed to win, there's too big to rig, I know, but keeping it open to what we just saw, basically in general, a free and fair election, which was the most surprising thing about it. I was like, why? Why did they? I mean, you went all out last time and you didn't even half try it this time. So here's my thought. There are definitely some smart people who have overview of things. We know in the 1997, Zbigniew Brzezinski published his book, The Grand Chessboard, in which he foresaw the coming of, he framed it in a pejorative sense, of course, but the awakening of political consciousness in much more people than was the norm in the sleepy 80s and 90s. He wasn't just thinking of Americans, but generally. And he was foreseeing a time when, in fact, he's passed on, but the kind of way that the think tankers speak about it now is the rise of populism. So they're seeing this already, even before Trump, because they're livid about Putin, and they call them all, whether it's China or Russia or around populists. And oh my God, even when your man Imran Khan was elected first time in Pakistan, here's more populism. It's like, I'm not sure what it is, but I can see that they see in all these things on a global level, a connectedness, the rise of populism, in quotes. So Trump happens. They really, oh shit, it's happening sooner than we thought, or something like that. That's their reflection on it. Okay. He's obviously going to, they're looking at the real numbers, maybe the numbers of social media chats about, they have analytical data that's beyond just the rigged polls and the stupid media polls. And they're looking at it and they're going, okay, this is only getting away from us. We need to do something that's risky, but let's do it just the once because we need the time. We need one term pulled back from this, a switcheroo, and then we'll let it go back again because we need to achieve two things. We need to kickstart a war in the Middle East, and we need to get things hot with Russia and Ukraine. If we just do those things, then we'll yield back because we'll have two hotspots in the world with which to think of the next steps. So maybe that's too grand and diabolical, but that is what has happened.
Yeah, it's the way it's played out, yeah.
Yeah,
so that's what people should be looking at, and the big question is whether or not Trump is able to circumvent those fracture points, basically, if he can avoid stepping on mines or allowing the deep state, the Washington establishment blob to throw a monkey wrench in the middle of the whole things and upend his administration from achieving anything tangibly good in America in particular, and by extension in the world, by making it worse, because I mean we could jump ahead 4 years and look back at the 4 years, i.e. from now until 2028. I wonder what we'd be looking at, what we'd be looking at. Just a major balls up, major screw up in the world, Trump's policies having completely failed because he was embroiled in major political, military, and economic crises, both in America and around the world. So that his second term will go down in history as having been defined by a significant worsening of the state of the world, basically.
Yeah.
And the livelihoods of people. Because I'm pretty sure, as sure as I can be, I'm sure that's what they would like to see happen.
Well, that's what they did do also. First 3 years of Trump's first term were going swimmingly, where it mattered, because it has to be reflected in the bottom line for American people. And that was the case. And then COVID. Not just COVID, but riding even on the back of COVID, riots all summer. And oh my goodness, look at this. America's on fire. Well, that's what it's like living under Trump, eh? So something like that, but global, not just in the US. Because now the interest isn't to stop him from winning a third term. It's done now.
And so domestically, what they could do in the US and the West, we've talked about internationally, what they could do to upend his administration internationally, but domestically, is there still a grassroots, significant enough grassroots element within the US, anti-Trump grassroots element within the US that could be weaponized and provoked into some kind of major, similar things that you just mentioned, burning cities, rioting, mass protests, not this time Black Lives Matter necessarily, but maybe trans lives matter or immigrants' lives matter, because obviously Trump's going to, at some point, according to him, he's going to
do mass deportations.
Yeah. So it really is ripe for, if you can get people, if there's enough. I mean, we talked about it. If those, that's why I mentioned the
100 million.
the electoral map there. You know, if there's 100 million people, and if only 1% of them, 1 million people, can be weaponized to get out in the streets and cause chaos, across 10 cities, 100,000 each across 10 major cities.
Well,
I wouldn't like to be in his position, to be honest.
It's curious you say that, because this next story kind of hints at that. Oh, actually, I gave you the wrong link, Scotty. Let me see. I meant to give you this one first. CNN. I think CNN, because it was CNN who broke the story. I mentioned this potential trouble on the horizon, on the near horizon, earlier in the show, but let's look at it in more detail now. CNN published a scoop that Pentagon officials discussing how to respond if Trump issues controversial orders. Like what? Let's go down. Pentagon officials are holding informal discussions about how the Department of Defense would respond if Trump issues order to deploy active duty troops domestically and fire large swathes of apolitical staffers. Apolitical? Didn't they fire anyone who was pro-Trump? Okay. Trump has suggested he would be open to using active duty forces for domestic law enforcement and mass deportations, and has indicated he wants to stack the federal government with loyalists and clean out corrupt actors in the US national security establishment.
Okay, so it's funny how CNN just puts that in there, you know. If they don't say that there's any problem with that, but it's in context that that's a dangerous, bad thing. It's a dangerous, bad thing for an administration, apparently, but specifically the Trump administration, to stack the government with loyalists. So when a new administration comes in, you're not allowed to put people who are loyal to the administration into government, because that's totalitarianism, right? But then how are you meant to actually get anything done if the people in your government don't actually support what you're doing? Surely you need people who support you. Like, you know, it's like having a company and you employ lots of people who don't like your company. Yeah, let's bring those in. But then the other, even more important, is clean out corrupt actors in the US national security establishment, i.e. in the blob. So, yeah, do we really want to clean out corrupt actors from the national security establishment? I'm not sure we want to do that, because those corrupt actors
are pretty useful.
You know, they've been doing all right so far, so maybe we don't want to do that. Yeah, Trump in his last term had a fraught relationship with much of his senior military leadership.
So, based on what you said before, with this story in mind, this smacks to me of like a forestalling of said situation where you've weaponized people, and Trump really has little choice. And then they'll portray it as totalitarian in measure, blah, blah, blah. But they're like, he's damned if he does, damned if he doesn't.
Just speaking from the position of deep state, if I'm just going to put my deep state hat on here, I would love to see if I really don't like Trump. I'm part of the cabal that wanted to kill him. I really don't like him, but now he's in for another administration. You know what would be awesome to see? Would be Trump having ordered National Guard or active duty troops on the streets to enforce a mass deportation, and then you get a bunch of pro-immigration lefties on the streets as well to push back against that, and you have a situation where Trump is seen to have been responsible for active duty troops shooting American citizens, including so-called illegal immigrants, on the streets of America.
That's their dream. That's their dream scenario.
That'll be enough.
Yeah.
If we can't get anything else to happen, just do that, because that's like, he will go down like, you know, his supposed comeback right now is the greatest comeback in the history of American politics.
Yeah.
And the things he's trying to do are put him up there with the greatest American president since Lincoln, right? And I just want to contrast that with him actually being the president who ordered
active duty soldiers to fire on protesters.
to fire on America.
That is obviously. I'm sure he's thought. I'm sure he knows.
That's like a wet dream for the deep staters, yeah.
Um,
And they have the means to do it, or at least try. They have the means to try to do that. If because it is a big problem. Like, how's that going to happen?
Yeah,
I mean,
I know.
if you really believe Trump's going to do what he says he's going to do, then this mass deportation thing, how's that going to happen? And
with a lot of sweat, blood, and tears.
does he think that there's going to be no pushback against it? Does he think he's not going to get a bunch of people who have spent the past 4-8 years or longer working with migrants?
Yeah.
Leftist groups who have worked with migrants to get them into this country, everywhere's America, to get them into America and to, care for them and all this kind of stuff. And then they're just going to sit back and watch them be physically deported without.
I'll be amazed if he carries through on that.
Mm-hmm.
In Trump fashion, he
though.
tends to aim high and then come back here. He's probably aiming high
Just to stop it.
just to stop it, to get a border and or border controls,
Yeah.
and to stop the distribution of 20,000 Haitians to Springfield, Ohio, and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
That may be a win for him, and he's holding the threat of mass deportations over the other side. Sort of like, you don't want me to, don't make it, you don't want,
Yeah.
Another,
It's a really smart move. Like, I mean, it's just out of the deal, right? Where you aim high, you tell people publicly that this is what you're going to do.
and you get polls that say 2/3 of the people support it.
Yeah,
by the way.
but then you're able to give when you're willing to take less than that. So when you come away from that by saying, okay, no mass deportations, but we're doing the wall, then that seems like a concession, and it can be seen as a win.
It's a win over 2016.
Well, it's a win for the Democrats, for the
Right,
pro-immigrants. They said we forced him
down.
to
Yeah, everyone can
back
walk
down.
away from it. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, exactly. That's how it works domestically and internationally. Like
Yeah.
we're thinking with Russia.
It's called diplomacy.
And Trump is actually good at it when it comes down to it, even though the presentation initially is like, oh my God, he sounds like Hitler. The second story with portending trouble on the horizon is the first one I sent you. That's the ABC News link. This isn't new news, but it's an update to the story. We don't need to listen. But the headline, three charged in Iran-linked murder plots, with one targeting Donald Trump as revenge for killing Qasem Soleimani. So this is going to be probably playing out over the transition period. The three in question, one of them is actually Iranian, and the other are two Iranian Americans. Maybe scroll down for the deets. 3 people charged in a series of alleged Iran-linked murder plots, with one of them accused of trying to assassinate Trump. Not the actual assassination; it's some other assassination plot that was supposedly running in the background. And others targeting an Iranian American activist and 2 Jewish Americans living in New York.
Yeah, there's a phrase for that. It's been around for quite a long time. It's called FBI terror plot.
Yeah.
This is just FBI terror plot rehashed of it. This is very well trained in creating phony terror plots, and it's interesting this comes out. It's not that this come out now. This kind of follows on from the announcement that in the immediate aftermath, or even beforehand. Well, they said it was beforehand, but in the immediate aftermath of the Butler assassination attempt on Trump, they said that. And oh, by the way, I know someone just tried to, some kid, whatever, tried to, with help or something, I don't know, whatever. Anyway, tried to assassinate Trump. But the FBI has actually been working on an investigation for the past 2 weeks before that Trump, about Iran plotting to kill Trump. And we're not saying that that this guy, what do you call him, Crooks, was Iranian linked or anything like that.
Yeah.
We're just saying Iran. Just in case any of you were thinking of, like, maybe wondering why the Secret Service seems to have been compromised, or why they were weren't in the place they were, and weren't in the places they should have been, and all the weirdness around that. Just to distract from that, I want to remind you about Iran, that they're actually trying to assassinate Trump.
Yeah.
Just in case you were thinking that it might have been us like the deep state.
Yeah.
No, it's Iran. And then
there was such a.
And then as soon as Trump wins, they announce this, which is, I don't know if it's the same one or it's a follow up or it's who knows.
It's the same one.
You can make it,
but it's expanded now. Now it includes Jewish Americans,
right?
And that was another thing I was going to highlight here.
Well, just before we go on from that, the response, Iran has responded. The other interesting thing is that they bring it up again immediately after Trump gets elected. Oh, by the way, Iran is trying to kill Trump, just in case Trump wants to add that into part of his policies.
Foreign policy.
For the next 4 years, Iran was trying to kill you, and Iran turns around and denies it immediately. Right there. As quoted by
Iran denies
New York Post.
Yeah.
So they're saying it's bullshit, and it is bullshit, obviously.
It's bullshit, but
they want to keep the focus on Iran. They want to make...
Yes.
They want to embroil. It's possible they want to embroil Iran.
They want continuity of foreign policy.
Yeah, they want to embroil Trump in some kind of a Middle Eastern...
A commitment to Iran.
A bigger Middle Eastern conflict.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating how he does this. He's already told RFK Jr., who's telling people like Tucker and anyone who'll listen, RFK Jr. had his own tweet today saying that Trump's one of his first executive orders in January will be, this time for real, to remove the 500 US troops sandwiched between 1 million Turkish troops and 250,000 Syrian troops in the middle of nowhere, in the sand and desert. Remember that? In northeast Syria. Now, he ordered that last time, and they secretly countermanded it and didn't fucking tell him. So apparently one of the first things is, this time for real, get out. So he's aware of, RFK was telling Carlson that Trump drew him a map of the Middle East and gave the numbers of troops in each. He didn't flesh that out, what that meant, but he was implying that Trump is aware of all the places that they can be trapped by, I was going to say by Israel, but by Israel / the deep state. It could be a trap from people behind him back home as well. So yeah, the tie-in with Israel and Iran, they want to get him on that. The thing is, while it's bonkers that Crooks, the insinuation that Crooks was maybe affiliated with or there was in parallel with an Iranian plot at the time, it's not implausible. Iran can deny it till the cows come home, but it's not implausible that there would be a revenge motivation because of Soleimani. It would be the height of. It would be uniquely Israeli if Trump got politically hoisted on a petard, and the justification that's used in the narrative, at least, is that this war or this development is because of revenge for Soleimani. Because Trump only did that, we now know, on his own, with sans the Israelis, because at the time he was telling that Fox News anchor that at the time me and Bibi we're gonna come on, we're on board this together, we're gonna whack Soleimani, and the Israelis pulled out of it. They said, no, we don't want to be upfront with this, and he went ahead and did that anyway. And of course, everyone read that as, he does that just because he loves Israel, but no, he said at the time, I did it to stop a war.
Soleimani was a wild card. Yeah, basically, he was probably as powerful, if not more powerful
than the Ayatollah,
than the Khomeini or the Ayatollah and the official Iranian government. He was in a position to kind of like direct Iranian military assets, basically, to his own liking.
Yeah.
And he would have been much more militant. He would have been more in line with Hezbollah and even Hamas. So yeah, he did it for Israel ultimately, yes, to stop a wider war in the Middle East because of the likelihood that Soleimani was gonna break free and go nuts, and
yet Israel pulled out of it, and now they're hinting that they could use that as the why for a provocation in the Middle East.
Yeah, but
gets Trump embroiled and American troops trapped.
Yeah, exactly. As
a hot war.
Well, but you're talking about a false flag here in a certain sense.
False flag, or yeah.
Because the Iranians aren't mad about Soleimani. They're not willing to use that, or not going to use that, or as a casus belli for attacking American bases in the Middle East or anything like that. There is no amongst the official Iranian government. Remember Soleimani.
No, but the American audience, it would be plausible to their ear.
Yeah,
it would make sense to them,
right,
to use that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you would have to get Iran to actually carry out some kind of an attack,
right?
You know, and you'd have to get Iran to say it publicly as well, in a certain sense. You know what I mean? I mean, it would just be spun as, oh, Iran's angry at America for Soleimani, so that's why they're trying to kill Trump, right? Mm-hmm. It's tit for tat, you know. Or in the absence of being able to kill Trump, it's they're attacking American bases, whatever, in the Middle East. So they're going to carry out a bigger attack on an American military base in the Middle East, and that way try and pull the Americans in. That would be the rationale afterward, even though, well, first of all, Iran wouldn't do that probably. So who would? Can you carry out a false flag of that scale, where some fifth column is able to carry out some major attack against American interests in the Middle East without Iran actually having done it?
Yeah, no. Yeah. You have to actually get them to do something that pulls the United States in to defend Israel, because at that point it would be existential.
The way you do that is to do something against Iran. A covert op against Iran that provokes them into a response. Yeah, when you get into black ops like that, it's hard to know, you know. It's because, like, we've thought of this before, obviously. Whenever black ops like that are carried out, the Iranians are struggling to find out, say, Iran was attacked in some way, but the Americans say that wasn't us, and the Israelis say that wasn't us, but nobody believes them because who else would do it? And the Iranians go, hang on, who did do this? Same thing with Russia, you know what I mean? The Russians have to weigh up whether or not this is something that they're being baited into responding to, and that it could be this fifth column that has acted periodically in these kinds of ways to try and provoke the two sides against each other.
Like MH17.
And both sides have to go, hang on a minute, first of all, be aware of that fifth column, what they can do, and stop and think for a minute, what are we being led into here? You know what I mean? And especially, it's very strange whenever both sides turn around and go, we didn't do that. One side says, no, that wasn't us.
Yeah.
Nobody says it was us. Everybody says that wasn't us. So the person who was attacked goes, well, who did it then? And the whole world goes, yeah, who did that? Is there some other actor involved here?
Yeah.
But that's never talked about.
I think this might be related. The incident in Amsterdam.
The poor Jews.
Trump's president-elect for a day, when there's a pogrom.
Pogrom, yeah. Fucking hysterical much.
They climbed down from that, but the initial media...
They didn't. The Jewish influencers are not climbing down at all. They keep on going on about...
The media reporting of it. Well,
yeah.
There was a blast where everyone woke up in the morning and it was like the day after Trump's been elected. Oh my God, there's a pogrom in Europe. And so it begins. Never again is happening again.
Yeah, crystal knocked.
It was so transparent. It doesn't have legs, but it's troubling. It's troubling that there was a Israeli football team in Europe at all to start with. I mean, what happened to when a country's at war and sanctions and they shouldn't be playing? Anyway, they were playing against Ajax Amsterdam, and the media is kind of irrelevant at this point. There were people on the streets filming it, uploading it to Twitter. There were citizen journalists asking people what happened, and the story was basically solved within a matter of hours. It's clear what happened. And then this is where the media is worse. This was what I was saying earlier. They're worse than useless. They're a menace to society because they came out with a version 24 hours later that wasn't what happened.
Yeah.
Where those poor Israelis were attacked for no reason whatsoever. They completely provoked it. So Sky News initially did a summary report on it. Right. And then changed it. they actually we'll play it here. This is basically more or less what happened. It's actually worse than their presentation here, but they deleted this report and re-uploaded a different one.
Violence in Amsterdam left at least 5 people injured and dozens have been arrested. But what happened? Supporters of Israeli football club Maccabi Tel Aviv arrived in Amsterdam ahead of their UEFA Europa League match against Amsterdam club Ajax. On Wednesday, social media videos verified by Sky News show Maccabi Tel Aviv fans tearing down Palestinian flags from outside of homes. Other social media videos appeared to show residents chasing Maccabi Tel Aviv fans. On Thursday, just before the game, crowds of Maccabi fans were filmed singing racist and anti-Arab songs. While a pro-Palestinian demonstration had been banned by the mayor over fears there would be clashes. Later that evening during the match, Israeli supporters appeared to disrupt the minute silence for Valencia flood victims with chants, whistles and fireworks. Maccabi fans were seen attacking locals as a police car can be seen driving by. People with Palestinian flags were seen marching on the streets. Maccabi supporters say they were beaten and attacked on the streets of the Dutch capital, with videos showing some of the violence.
Say free Palestine and we go. Good.
Sky News could not independently verify all of the footage shown. Police arrested 62 people. 5 were taken to hospital, but have since been discharged. Israeli far-right ultras are notorious for their racism and physical violence. Dutch, Israeli and British leaders denounced the attacks as anti-Semitic and even referred to it as a pogrom. But their statements failed to mention the assaults by the Israeli hooligans against Dutch citizens.
Yep. Now, that's impressive, because that was basically a balanced story. If anything, a little bit too balanced in favor of the instigators, but still, it's balanced. They re-uploaded with some of the same narration from their reporter, and some of the same clips, but changed the order. They began with the public statements about anti-Semitism, and they dropped anything that showed that the attacks were started by the hooligans.
It's a fucking farce. I mean, it's been going on for so long now. I mean, I don't know, decades. He's had it up to here with his really bullshit about anti-Semitism. Like, I mean, literally, there's like, you know, like most football teams, football clubs, they have a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them have kind of far-right extremists, and they're quite racist, right? And this is the case with this Maccabi Tel Aviv club, where they have this, probably all of them, I don't know, but at least a section of them are a bunch of fucking right-wing racist hooligans. They come to Amsterdam, they're going to wreck the place, kind of like the English football hooligans do. They wreck the place and start provoking violence, inciting violence, and obviously their chosen target would be Arabs, and they'd be inciting them with Palestinian slogans. And in the context, that's egregious, right? So these fuckers are the perpetrators. They're the aggressors, and they're racist by any standards. And if it was anybody else, they would be called that, unequivocally. But because they're Israeli, it's anti-Semitic. It's fucking nonsense. It's utter horseshit. And anybody who actually buys that, and it's amazing. But all you have to be is a Jew of some denomination. Like, there's a guy called Badil. His first name is, he's a comedian, UK comedian, and he hasn't shut up on Twitter about pogroms, anti-Semitism, about this event. And
David Badil.
What kind of a brain dead arsehole do you have to be to at least not go, okay, look, they brought it on themselves. Don't go to a European country where there's a significant percentage of Arabs and start laughing about the Israeli slaughter of Palestinians, or they're probably going to attack you. No, we should be allowed to do that. And if they do attack us, they hate us because we're Jews.
Yeah.
They hate our Jewish right to gloat about the death of Palestinians. You see? Doesn't it make sense?
Yeah.
Fucking idiots. Anyway, and they did. She said there was seen to be some evidence they did whistle and boo and cheer. Here's the video of it. When at the football game, there was a big sign put up in memory of the flood victims in Valencia.
Nothing to do with Israel-Palestine.
And that's them in the back with their yellow flags in that section. And if you play it there, that's them in the minute silence. That's them cheering, whistling, and booing. So they don't care about anybody. They hate everybody. They gloat over anybody's death. These people enjoy making fun of the death of anybody anywhere, particularly Arabs. But Spanish people in Valencia, they'll do they'll do as well. So these people are scum of the earth. And the Israelis and the Jews on social media are supporting this, literally the scum of the earth. By anybody's standards, they're the scum of the earth.
Yeah. And the Israeli reaction, we're sending special forces to get
the military to bring them back. Yeah, bring them all home.
Then they backed down. They said, well, actually, they're coming home on their regular scheduled flights because there is no pogrom. It's troubling, though. 24 hours after Trump's elected, pogrom. It's like, what? I'm not saying there's anything directly contrived to make that happen, but it's an interesting sequence, you know, because as much as, I mean, they even had Trump flags. You could see their supporters with the flag, and Bibi was the first, wasn't he the first? Him or Macron, the bootlicker, were the first to congratulate Trump on his victory. Bibi was also the first to congratulate Biden before it was even decided 4 years ago. It looks like a close relationship, but I think this is the big question, right? This is the only question that's really important, especially now, because the situation in Gaza is the worst it's been since it started. People are starving to death.
They're carrying on with their genocide, yep.
Is Trump going to stop this?
If he is,
I'm not.
Any decency.
That's not a. Yeah, if he has any decency or even just fucking rationality, because the non-linear consequences of it could be off the charts. It's not just regional war, either.
Yeah.
I don't know. I agree with the critics of Trump at this point, saying, nah, he just wants them to get it over with. He's on their side. He wants the genocide too. That is what it looks like. So they're not wrong right now. I'm not going to, falsely hope. But if he is at all serious about his principles when it comes to not so much caring about people and saving the planet. Obviously, he's an isolationist, but he does seem to have enough of a heart to be anti-war in general. Let's see that in action right now. You've been given the hot potato, like I suggested. They it's like they tied you down for 4 years just to start this, and then said, "You're free now." What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
Huh? It's well underway. They're starving.
Yeah.
Stop it.
Yeah. Let's see how good you are.
It's a big ask, but...
Yeah. Anyway. What else you got?
Any more global deluges?
Yeah, a lot of that going on.
It's still happening in Spain.
Northern Spain.
Northern Spain
overnight.
this week.
Yeah. Last 3 or 4 days. South Carolina.
Cars. We're talking about like cars floating down the street kind of
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. Major deluges in discrete areas,
I saw one of those from Colombia.
Yeah. In South America as well.
But
yeah.
Colombia is,
All over the place.
is in the more tropical regions. But then it was Paraguay last week. The death toll from the Valencia deluge is very similar to the one in Hurricane Helene, 223, 225.
There's still about 80 people missing, though,
Okay.
in Spain.
Massive protest there yesterday. Turned a bit violent. they're calling for the head of the regional head. So Spain is kind of like a confederation. It's just federal. It's almost like a federal state. So they want the resignation of the head of Valencia region.
Yeah. For not predicting climate change would hit their area. Well, they're probably saying different things than that, but that's part of it, actually, not warning us in time, etc.
And you mentioned that there was more rain this week, heavy rain, but further north, closer to Barcelona, Girona.
The border.
Then check this out. This is the weather forecast for next week for, again, eastern Spain. This keeps happening. Is it this same or similar-ish setup? So the description by this guy, he's a global warmist, but he gets descriptions more or less on targets. An anticyclonic Rossby wave-breaking event will facilitate the development of yet another cut-off upper-level low next week. It's too early for details, but the eastern region of Spain should once again prepare for possible flash flooding. Mm-hmm. So have a look there. Again, it's coming around from the east.
Mm-hmm.
That's
why
does that keep happening?
But the precipitation is coming from the south. It's in the south. It's evaporation up from the Mediterranean primarily.
Yeah. And it's then meeting colder
air coming down.
North,
yeah.
And it's
what's called storms.
This is the current kind of upper limit in Europe.
Yeah, the breakaway thing is they're talking about the jet stream. The jet stream's doing all sorts of weird, like little sections of the jet stream that break off and pull down and cause that kind of cyclone, essentially.
Yeah.
And it brings the precipitation from the Mediterranean in overland.
And this can apparently happen multiple times in a row.
Well, it's going to keep going over and over again. It's going to keep happening. And the main thing you have to be concerned about, and this isn't just here, but it's also in the US, is what happens when this kind of thing continues on through the winter, when there's a lot more cold air coming down, and the air temperature in general over, like, say, Spain and France and Europe in general is much colder anyway. Then you might have that amount of precipitation falling as snow. And of course, it's 10 times in terms of the volume of rain. It falls 10 times as the volume of snow. So if you've got 1 inch or 1 centimeter of rain falling, then it's 10 centimeters of snow. So
you're saying we could have a white Christmas?
Maybe, and then it might not last very long. It depends. It's chaotic. It's all over the place, and people just need to be aware of it. And people living at the bottom of hills or mountain ranges in towns along rivers in particular need to seriously think about. Need to keep a very close eye on the weather map, and err on the side of caution. Basically, when you see the weather forecast reporting for your area, maybe a storm or 5 centimeters of rainfall overnight or something like that. Well, you could err on the side of caution that it might be 40.
Yeah.
Because they don't seem to be able to tell
wrong.
people how much rain is going to actually fall. They haven't been able to do that at all. They've been predicting moderate, average, normal for that kind of a system, normal amount of rainfall, but you get way more. And it's like overall in the entire system there may be an average amount of rainfall, but the problem is that it seems to be falling all at once in one very small area rather than being distributed over a wider area. And when that's where you get in these floods. We're not talking about floods like across massive areas, as you've seen. You're talking about large volumes of water coming rushing down from slightly elevated areas behind the city where rivers begin or whatever, in hills or mountains, and flowing down into the path of least resistance, let's say, through the middle of a town. You know what I mean? Like even Valencia, the area that was actually flooded was relatively small, but it's a big city, 800,000 people, so you have maybe...
So it might not just be that there's a higher volume of precipitable matter in the atmosphere, but that the way it's falling, it's more concentrated.
Yeah. I mean, it's different. I mean...
The atmosphere itself is changing, it's not just a water content issue, it's more complex.
Yeah,
the
well, it's
dynamics,
definitely more
the
complex.
dynamics of it are
Yeah,
changing.
but it does the closest thing that it matches to is the way. Just go and look on YouTube for monsoons. Go and look at the equatorial regions around the world that get monsoons. It's usually in the fall and in spring, or the monsoon times, 6 months apart. And just look at the kind of rainfall they get. You kind of get it in Florida as well, although Florida isn't in a monsoon area, but you get these just serious downpours.
Like a tap.
And it lasts 10 minutes, you know, or it can be 10 minutes and then a break and then
Again.
10 minutes, you know. But it's just the volume that falls at once. And the problem is not that that's happening per se. It's that
Happening in places that aren't used to it, aren't built for it.
Yeah, well, the ground is not used to that. It hasn't experienced those kind of weather patterns or rainfall patterns for thousands of years. So the ground has formed based on the kind of weather that it usually gets. And if it's clay, which in a lot of European countries it's clay, it's not good because clay doesn't absorb.
You get more runoff.
It doesn't absorb. It can saturate relatively quickly, and then if it's dry, it just runs off. If it's saturated, it'll run off as well. It doesn't have an absorptive sufficient
Structure to it to take all that water.
Yeah, sufficient ability to absorb rainwater, and it just runs off and runs down through, like I said, the path of least resistance, which is usually along riverbeds that then overflow and then flood, and you have significant torrent of water coming through, and it's going to wash through people's houses and carry people away, carry cars away. But again, so far it's been in very discrete areas. We've gained a lot of headlines and stuff, but it's been in very discrete areas. We're not talking about a Noahide flood or whatever, anything like that, you know, where it's raining for 40 days and 40 nights non-stop over a massive area, you know. That's to come, maybe. But
Okay.
But this is the first warning. We just get little places here and there and get people to sit up and take notice type thing, you know, that things are changing. So yeah, and again, global warming, climate change, whatever you call it, we never had a problem with that. Our only issue ever was that they claimed that it was man-made.
Right.
Which it's not.
It can't
because
be.
it's part of all you have to do is look at a history, recorded history, and, you know, intimations of non-recorded history, and you see that the planet has gone through cyclical type climate change events.
Humans don't have the power, even combined, to unmoor the intertropical convergence zone from the equator and send it north and south. I mean, you're talking about that's a structural planetary force way beyond my cloud seeding or my space-based lasers, you know?
Yeah.
Or, for that matter, your CO2 emissions from your car.
Right. So that's what's going on. That's where we're at this point.
So next week we go back to, in the interest of balance and fairness, we go back to being lefties.
Yeah.
We rag on Trump from now on.
Yes.
Because he's the man now. He's the power.
Right.
We don't become never Trumpers, but we criticize him every which way.
No. We don't stick it to the man type thing just because he's the man, right? We don't stick it. We're not just we're not anti-authority. Let's say we're not anti-government in general. The reason we've got a kind of reputation for doing that, or were like that in the past, was because the governments, particularly in America and in Europe, that countries had for the past 20 years were all a bunch of warmongering,
limp-wristed
warmongering cycles. So that's our yardstick. If you're a limp-wristed warmongering psycho, then you're going to get it. But if it changes, then we don't have a problem.
Yeah,
as Trump would say.
Yeah, think Lindsey Graham.
Yeah.
Him, no. Trump,
We'll give him a chance. Yeah, anyway, so we'll leave it there for this week, folks. Thanks for, what? Did we miss something? Thanks for, oops, something went wrong. Anyway, something went wrong with the chat, but I think people were chatting. So thanks for chatting. Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back next week with another one on whatever madness has been going on between now and then. So until then, have a good week. See you later.
Thanks for watching. Bye all.
can't stop the signal now.